Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big Dave's Healthy Happy Hour. It is Thursday night, February 18th, and very excited to talk to you guys for tonight. I'm David Robinson, author of My Unremarkable Brain, in stores now, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. And I've set this up, this little series, so that I can share with you some of the things that I've learned in my journey, some of the people that I've discovered along the way, and just have some fascinating conversations around the idea of food and health and happiness. So tonight, very excited to have a woman on named Libby Lewis from the Lewis Cattle Farm. And she's going to tell us all about cow farming. Before we do, please reminder to everyone, this is not medical information. I'm not a doctor, not a nutritionist, just a person who's interested in this stuff and, learning and growing. And so this is all for information and entertainment. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce Libby Lewis.
Hey, Dave, how are you?
Great. How you doing, Libby?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having us on tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. Very excited to talk to you.
Likewise.
So I'll tell you, you don't really know me at all. We just met about 5 minutes ago. So I'll tell you my story a little bit and my background. As I tell in my book, it's sort of a journey of learning. I became interested in the idea of food, first of all, from a diet perspective and trying to lose a few pounds, and found my way to the low carb diet and that whole world, and started, reading and learning about it, listening to podcasts, and through that journey, found my way to the idea of epilepsy and diet, and how diet can influence the functioning of the brain and how well it functions, and how the ketogenic diet in its various forms is really the best way to power the brain. So that's kind of what my story is about. And I talked to other people who have had similar journeys. One thing that's come up again and again is that once you start looking at this, you start thinking about not just food quantity and not just things like macronutrients, carbs and fats, but you really start thinking about food quality. And so that's why I was really excited to learn about your farm and what you guys are doing. Now, we found you through friends of ours, Dana, my wife's coworker, and he had a connection to you guys and set up a cow share. And I said, okay, well, I've never done this before, so how does it work? And he said, well, we kind of all go in together. We buy a whole cow, and we get some nice frozen meat to bring home. I will show you I have a quick slideshow, show and tell. So this was the day that we brought the meat home. This was one of the happiest days in my dog's life. This is Jake and Buddy checking out the new package. Jake, you can see, gave us the puppy dog eyes, was trying to get in on some of that. We did not let him do that. And
look at there.
Yep, and immediately. Actually, this was fast forward a month or two. This was the night that my book was officially published. We got these beautiful steaks. What do you call these? Ribeyes, or are they?
I think you've got New York strips there.
They look like New York strips. Yeah. Beautiful rind of fat on the side there. Amazing. Cooked them from frozen, actually, based on an article that I read in Cooks Illustrated. Got to give them a shout out. Check out that article, folks, if you haven't seen it. It actually do a side-by-side comparison of cooking a steak from frozen versus thawing it first. And if you want that nice pink center, medium rare, cooking from frozen is the way to go. So, and there it is on the plate with some nice kale laing. So I did get my vegetables in there that night too.
Awesome.
Anyway, so that is my Lewis Cattle Company story. Tell us your Lewis Cattle Company story. How did this whole thing start, and what made you interested in it? Take us back to the beginning, if you would.
Yeah. So the beginning really belongs. I have to begin with my in-laws, Richard and Elizabeth Lewis, who, were from the greatest generation. My father-in-law fought in World War II. Both my in-laws were part of the CIA back in the day. And I'll make a very long story short in that my father-in-law's cover got blown. And he needed to change careers. They had purchased the land, which is now Lewis Cattle Farm, in Augusta County in the early 60s. And the early 70s, they brought really their 4 children, my husband being the third, and then his little sister, back from Ecuador to farm. And I can't even imagine what that was like for them, and that they went from living in kind of the embassy lifestyle to, virtual learning how to cattle farm,
Wow.
in a house that hadn't been renovated. I mean, everything happened a little bit faster than they had certainly planned.
Yeah.
But my in-laws persevered, and they were just the most incredible, wonderful people. And especially my father-in-law, I would say, he was eco-friendly before eco-friendly was real, that people were really paying attention to it. He ate healthy, he worked out, he was strong as an ox, so fit. And he really ran his farm the same way. A great businessman, probably not so much, but a great man for sure. And my mother-in-law as well worked so hard on the farm, and was the principal for the Virginia School of Deaf and Blind there in Stanton. She was on the deaf side. My in-laws had great long lives. They passed away when they were 89 and 85. And my husband and I took over running the farm at my mother-in-law's death, which was in 2015. And we had been working with her for the couple of years after my father-in-law passed away. But we made certainly upgrades to the farm. We, purchased really a whole new herd, fenced, and just laid the land out in a better way to where we were, I guess today, kind of the N word is rotational grazing. And all their water, now comes from natural springs right there on the farm. So we made these changes and we've upgraded, and they were, we have 2 seasons of calving. We have a spring herd and a fall herd. My in-laws were calving year round, which is not the way you want to do it.
Wow.
But again, they were 85 and 89, so more
That'll
power
keep you busy, I reckon.
Yeah, more power to them that they were still doing it. So John and I, John's my husband, in 2015, we were selling our calves really to other farmers. Really, all of ours were going to Pennsylvania at around 525 pounds. And last year, at the end of 2019, rolling into 2020, we just got so frustrated with what we saw was going on in the meat industry, and decided that we would take our calves to full weight, and we would sell our own beef where we controlled the process the whole way. So we started doing that. I think our first meat was delivered at the end of May in 2020. It was a learning curve, but we're here and we love it, and we're going to stick with it. I mean, we're expanding. We've bought some more land to make sure that we can stay with what we're doing and continue to deliver, those beautiful steaks that you had for dinner.
That's wonderful. That's amazing. So, so great. And before I forget to say it, I think I did forget. Folks, if you have questions for Libby or for me, type them on in the chat there. They'll pop up and I'll just read them off. I know we have some business folks. I see my friend John Saunders there. We have some people who love food. I see Kathy there. So maybe we'll kind of bounce back and forth. But I'm interested in going back to your in-laws. So you said they were eco before eco was really a thing, and really Rachel Carson, Silent Spring didn't come out to 1969, something like that. I mean, that was kind of the beginning of that consciousness, right, about DDT and pesticides and things like that. So for them, where did that come from? Was that just sort of who they were as people, or?
I think yes. My father-in-law probably dragged my mother-in-law on a little bit, but she was certainly a willing participant. He believed in absolutely no pesticides, nothing, that wasn't organic. He didn't like food that he didn't know where it came from, and he didn't want to change anything on his farm that really wasn't from nature. And he went to forestry school after the war at Duke, and even when he would need to clear some of the woods at the farm, it was all selective. He never believed in clear cutting or doing any damage to the earth. And so that was passed down to my husband.
Yeah.
And we've continued with that, in both their, to honor both of them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I mean, that's so important, that real stewardship idea, right? Of caring for the earth, not just using it, sort of. I always, that term natural resource, always kind of, like you've got human resources, you've got, the financial resources, you've got natural resources, which is just stuff you can use to make more money.
Yeah. And my husband says all the time, and he's now teaching our children, like, we don't own this land, we're stewards of this land. And so we need to continue passing it down to generations and taking care of it and not abusing it. Yeah.
No, that is so powerful. And it's great that you both have been able to step in and hang on to the land. I'll tell you a quick story. A woman that I work with, actually, she just retired. Linda's her name. I work very closely with her. And so her parents were hog farmers in Southern Maryland, and had a big farm there, and worked it for years and years. And when they sort of retired and were unable to take care of it, her father had some health problems. Eventually died of cancer. Her mother had some health problems too, and they sort of enrolled in, I guess it was a state-run grant program where Maryland will sort of give you a subsidy to let your land lie fallow, kind of thing. I'm not sure what I'm way out of my element, so I'm not sure exactly what that was there. But anyway, they recently did sell the land to a neighbor with a nearby farm, an Amish family. So they're very happy that it's able to remain a farm at the very least. There's a lot of farms in that area, I'm sure where you are, that are being converted to housing or developments and things like that.
My husband can remember. So our farm is not far off of Route 11 in Augusta County, and you turn off for about a mile. And you can remember there were 4 homes that you passed from turning off of Route 11 to our farm, which would probably be about like a 2-mile drive. There are hundreds.
Wow.
because of the proximity to Route 11,
Mhm.
Which connects with 81. Yeah, I mean, farming is a tough business right now,
Yeah.
especially the local farmer.
Yeah.
What we all grew up with being used to having. It's a tough business now, and we are dedicated to supporting our neighbors as well.
hmm hmm Yeah. Yeah. So talk about that transition a little bit when you in 2015, when you all made took the farm over. You didn't come in completely blind, like you said. You were kind of
Right.
helping out. But was it a big transition for you? What was the highs and lows of that, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge transition. Maybe not so much for my husband because he grew up there. My family did. I love spending time with my grandmother, and she grew up around Richmond and Hanover, so they were farmers as well. But I grew up in Richmond,
Mm-hmm.
so to step in and really, I have to say, me personally, John was kind of running the farm on his own. I mean, I would listen, and of course, when we were up there, I'd go out and work with them and ride with them, and I was getting to know the business. But the reality became that you start to learn the business side of farming. And it's tough to compete against the big corporate farmers. And if the pricing at auction of those calves, like I was talking about, that we sold at 525 pounds gets too high, they just go and short the market. I mean, it's quite a business, right? Like it's yeah. And so we watched our calves, that were selling, let's say, about $1.40 a pound, virtually overnight sell for 86 cents a pound.
Wow.
Which is hemorrhaging.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've put in over the months. How many months does it take for a calf to get to that weight?
9 months.
Okay, so that's a lot that you've put in. I mean, sweat equity.
I mean, we have a farm manager, and again, we're rotationally grazing, and they're never standing in mud, and they are having the best care that they can possibly have. And then a market just arbitrarily swings. And then it swings during COVID when you can't find meat on the shelves, right?
Right.
So my husband and I just sat down, and we decided that we were going to bring a superior product to the market. We have a wonderful farm manager who, I would say, probably in 2016, for the first time that I have known the farm, which would be 23 years, we started planting corn. And we are now able to use our own corn. So we know how it was raised.
Yeah.
And so now we can kind of control what our animals are eating from beginning to end. And so we decided at the beginning of 2020 that we were going to change the market, and we're going to not just do it for ourselves. We are going to bring our neighbors along with us, who maybe don't have the time or kind of the knowledge of the internet and maybe marketing plans and things like that. And we're dedicated to that because our neighbors are good, hardworking, and raise their cattle the same way we do.
Yeah, that really comes through on your website. And folks, let me put this up. Do check it out when you get a chance. LewisCattleVA.com. Several times in there, you mentioned that's core to your mission, right?
Absolutely.
Feeding our neighbors. I love that. You're not trying to dominate the world. It's, changing the world, but starting in your own corner.
Yeah. So our animals, I kind of leading to that, our animals have no hormones.
Mhm.
no steroids, and no antibiotics. That doesn't mean that we don't ever have an animal that needs an antibiotic.
Hmm.
But if we do, we're selling that at auction. We're not going to take that animal, through the whole process.
Gotcha.
And when we're packaging, we don't put any preservatives or anything. I mean, it's just clean, beautiful Virginia beef.
Nice. And while we're on that, I've got a question came in from John Robinson. No relation, but he is, except that we ate this, the same cow. He says that loved our portion of the cow share. He said, very interesting that you raised calves until 529 or 9 months. How often is a cow sold before it's processed? So can you give us a little bit of an overview for those of us who know nothing about any of this, how it's typically done, how what you're doing now is different?
So we do it a little bit differently. So I'll just talk about what we do at our farm.
Mhm.
I can't compare what we do to what the big corporate.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fair.
So ours probably don't grow quite as fast because we let them roam on our farm. Where we used to sell them at 9 months, it'll take us another 9 to possibly 11 months to get them to the right weight for processing.
Okay.
So hopefully, so somewhere between 18 and 20 months is when an animal is the right size.
And that's essentially the entire life cycle of the cow. Yeah.
Of the cat, yes. Now our mamas,
Mhm.
our mamas will be on the farm, we hope, for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Some it's 8, but again, we have such a wonderful farm manager. He went to Virginia Tech, graduated from their agriculture program. His family are huge cattle farmers right next door to us. And they, it is truly a community. And he just does a beautiful job. So most of our mamas make it to about 10 years. So
Wow.
I'm not sure which question was being asked, but hopefully that answered both of them.
No, yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. It's interesting because I remember a few years ago I heard a story. I think it was on NPR. Maybe it was on one of their podcasts. They did Planet Money, I think it was. But anyway, they did sort of this tracing the life of a calf, particularly in Texas. And there was something because of the tariff laws or something like that, where the calves would be born in Texas, and then within a month they were brought over to Mexico to grow. And then, when they reached, I think, right about that 9-month stage, they were brought back to the United States to be sold, and they kind of went back and forth and back and forth. I have to think, maybe it's just the old softy in me, but I have to think that having that home, that groundedness, that, life cycle of care and consistency is good for the cow, and probably good for the meat as well, right?
Well, it is. I mean, it's just like anything, any human, animal, even a plant, right? As long as you don't stress it, it's better.
Yeah.
And so, we take huge pride, and if you came to our farm, I mean, there's no animal bawling. They're not crying because they're missing some nutrient, or they don't have fresh water, or they don't have enough grass. And we take huge pride in that, because I think if you saw, a lot of what's happening at some large, huge farms, the animals are stressed.
Yeah. And I think, I'm sure all of us have seen some expose or some film, and often telling us we have to stop eating meat because look at these terrible conditions. without getting too much into all that, the politics and the
Right,
controversy,
right.
that. But there is a lot of talk these days. Well, let's just start with this. Let's start with the labels that we see, right? Grass-fed. We'll see organic. We'll see, the typical, the grade A and those sorts of things, Angus and whatnot. What can you help us unpack or unravel some of those labels?
Well, I can a little bit, okay, but probably the market that is the hardest is for somebody who says they want a grass-fed animal.
Okay.
It is not heavily regulated.
Okay.
So, for example, someone could buy, say they bought one of my, well, ours are grass-fed, so that's a bad example, but they could go to auction. I do finish on corn, but say they go to auction and they buy an animal and they don't know anything about the history of it. They can take it back to their farm, put it on grass for 30 days, and they're able to call it a grass-fed animal.
Wow.
So I think, which I do believe that people that are really interested in their health and wanting to know what's in the meat, any meat that they're eating, is gonna want to start knowing if it's being raised from birth.
Okay.
I think the story that you are referring to, where animals get moved across state lines, where animals are moved from one farm to another with different philosophies, it's very hard to track what those animals have been given in their life and how they've been treated. And it's really that final farm that gets to say what it was. Now, I'm not saying, there's certainly grass farmers out there that are raising from birth, right, to full weight. But there are also a lot that are not. And I think that that's very tough. Organic is another difficult. We do not call ours certified organic just because of the loops that the government makes you go through. And it's difficult for a small farmer to navigate all the government regulations. But again, that is another that I just think if people could get used to going back to buying from their local farmer, they would be able to track that better than maybe the government can.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. I mean, rather than waiting for someone to tell you, kind of get in touch with, and that's why I love the idea of just eating local and talking to the person.
Well, you think about, and I'm not going to pick on chicken, but my husband and I crack up. I can't remember if it's Tyson or Purdue, where like the father and the son, one of the Purdue's is out, or whoever it is out there like loving on their free range chicken. Well, the chicken's houses are in our back. We don't own them, but chicken houses are all around us. And that's not exactly what free range looks like from a great big commercial.
Right.
I don't know if you've seen that ad, but that's not quite what it looks like.
I know what you're talking about. Yes. It's not, they're not John Wayne out there on the range, riding around. Yeah.
The local guys are. The other day we were up at the farm and we had to stop the car because our neighbor's chickens, who sells chicken and sells the eggs, were across the road, obviously eating some corn that had been cut off when, the combine had been through or whatever. But, we had to wait for them to kind of trot back across the road. So local farmers.
Here's the question. Did you find out why?
Why the chicken crossing? Well, I think I did, because they were eating corn.
Well, okay. Now we know. Thank you. Solved for all time.
Little did I know, I just solved,
So there was something else I was going to go with that, but we have a couple of questions that have come in, and want to make sure we get to these. So Kathy asks, because you mentioned you finish your cows on corn. What does that mean, and what's the purpose of doing so?
So it adds the marbling to the meat, which makes the meat more tender and more flavorful. The finishing is what, honey, 45, 60 days? Max 60 days, because you don't want it to get too much fat. I will say that we are going to start doing some full grass-fed, but we won't have that ready until maybe August or September. I prefer the corn-fed, but we're getting a lot of requests for the grass-fed, so we're going to go ahead and do that as well. So we'll have both.
Right. Okay. I do too. Just, I like that marbling. I like that nice bit of fat in there. But it's essentially a matter of taste, right? Some people like a leaner.
It is. Yeah. I mean, the finishing on corn does make it a little more tender, and I think more flavorful, but to each his own. We all have different taste.
Yeah. No, definitely. And so that answers Effie's question about as well, about the differences. What about feed, though? So there's a quote that I heard at some point. I'm sure you've heard it. It's not just that you are what you eat; you are what you ate. Right. So you need to go that one step further. And I've heard, and I don't know if you can confirm any of this, but that a lot of the commercially available feeds themselves, because you mentioned growing your own corn to do that last finishing step, that there could be issues with that. Do you know anything about that?
I'm sorry, issues with
the commercially available feeds and sort of where they come from, or what's maybe additives or other things that are in there.
Yeah, I mean, I can't talk really to what the commercial, big, huge commercial farms are doing. But they're buying their corn from really all over, not just the United States, right? They're bringing corn in from anywhere that they can get it. We are growing our own corn. It's been a bit of a change. The Augusta Co-op actually stores it for us, and will bring it to us when we're ready for it. So, the farmers belong to a co-op, and so they store it for us and bring it to us when we're ready for it.
That's interesting. And so, again, bringing local down to that micro level, really. That's very cool. There's a statistic that's often cited by people in the sort of pro, or I guess anti-meat thing, that will say that 65%, or sometimes it's 90%, or sometimes it's 30% of the plants, the crops grown in America go to feeding animals. And so we should just eat those ourselves, and we wouldn't have to eat the animals. And how much better would that be for everyone? And I kind of wondered about that. And I did some digging in it because, I got into a Twitter war with somebody about it accidentally. And so I started looking into sort of how this was particularly with soybeans, how soy meal is produced.
Right.
And because I'd also heard that 65% of the soybeans are grown for soy oil, aka vegetable oil, which is a whole different episode, I guess. I said, how could that be? Well, essentially, what they do is they they extrude oil from soybeans through this chemical process that looks something like you'd see in a Texas oil refinery. And what's left over is the carbohydrate, the protein, the mush that they then convert into animal feed. So yes, it's true, but yes, those same beans are also being fed to humans. So it's all much more complicated than we tend to think. We tend to think, well, just it's very black and white, but
well, I think also, kind of going back to what we were just talking about, I'm not going to speak to anything other than cattle right now because that's what
sure.
I know. But our cattle aren't getting corn until like the last 45 days.
Right.
So it's not like they're eating corn the whole time.
Right.
And I would argue, I mean, I don't know, but it would be interesting to look at the statistic of how much corn is being used for ethanol for everybody to run their car because corn, so I would definitely argue that most cows, are, or at least from your local farmers, are eating grass. And we were thrilled, for us this year. And again, we only have 160 mamas on about 750 acres. So we definitely are giving them plenty of land to roam, but we didn't feed hay until after Christmas this year.
Wow. So they were able to get everything they need from the land.
That's right. And of course our hay is from our land also,
Right.
but to be able to make it that long without even pulling hay out.
That's excellent.
Yeah, is exciting. So
excellent.
I'm no expert on how much corn is being utilized, but it's not coming from your local farms that are causing some depletion in the corn supply.
Excellent to know. I got a question here, another question from John Robinson, who says this may be a grocer question, GROCER, that is. But how wary should consumers be about supermarket mailers advertising USDA bone-in ribeye for $6 a pound?
Well, I'm not going to take on the USDA in that regard, but let me tell you the difference.
Okay.
It doesn't say that it hasn't been given hormones. It doesn't say it hasn't been given steroids, and it doesn't say it hasn't been given antibiotics. Just because it says that it's USDA approved does not mean that it hasn't had chemicals. And chances are it has.
Okay.
It has been given nothing. Our meat has been given nothing towards the end of their life to make the meat larger and fuller. And the other difference is our meat is dry aged. And so it hangs in a very cold refrigerator for 3 weeks. Whereas meat in the grocery store it's wet aged. So as soon as it's cut, it's vacuum sealed. And chances are there are preservatives inside that packaging, where our meat has no preservatives. So like you said, it was frozen. So when our meat comes from hanging and is butchered, it's like flash frozen. So there are no preservatives.
Excellent.
So
another, yeah, no, it does. I mean, again, there are so many steps to think about here, right? And actually, Powie's question, if we have time for a couple more questions here. Powie's question is sort of a follow-up on that. She asked, do you cut up your own meat? Do you sell it to people who cut it up? The butchering process. And I think that's a whole different piece of this, right?
It is. So right now we are able to sell to the consumer. I don't have a USDA facility where We are able to resell, meaning I'm not selling to grocery stores or restaurants or anything like that. The way we do our meat, like if you looked at our website, you fill out a cut sheet and we have the meat cut to your specifications. And so, a lot of people, and I think actually, Dave, I was talking to you before this, when you guys order in the future, ask for those bones. So you have them in the freezer for the bone marrow. We're happy to provide that. And you can get all of your meat with bone in, which is great because you do get that bone marrow along with it.
Mm-hmm. And the collagen, we spend, I don't know, $20 a can for these collagen things.
Yes, you can just ask for that too.
Just get it straight off the bone, right?
Yep.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. And you do mention on your website that you have sort of a narrow radius that you do sort of, I forget if it was delivery.
Right now we're in Virginia. Mm-hmm. The USDA is pretty strict on that. Yeah. So we can sell anywhere in Virginia, and we will deliver for a nominal fee. I mean, we deliver around the farm for free, and we deliver around Richmond for free, but we're up in Northern Virginia and Virginia Beach and Roanoke. I mean, we pretty much everywhere we've been and delivered meat now. I've got, my husband laughs. One of my very romantic gifts that I got since we started this is I got a refrigerated truck.
Ah, nice.
Yes, it's branded just like your bag. They can see the Lewis Cattle logo, but if you see us riding down the street, we're bright green. Okay,
I'll be the one running after it, trying to grab onto the bumper. Yeah, that's awesome. And that speaks to another thing that I'm a huge fan of is just eating local. I forget who said this, but somebody heard this somewhere along the way. Why would there's an avocado that has 500 calories. Well, how many gallons of jet fuel were expended in trying to get that avocado from Mexico to my mouth, right? How much better whenever we can. Now, I still do love avocados, but whenever we can, buying, and of course, and again, going back to John's question, that USDA bone-in ribeye, who knows where it's come from, right? Whereas, if, from the environmental standpoint, the less distance that food has to travel, the better for the environment and for everybody, really, right?
And just I can feel my father-in-law patting me on the back right now. Just no chemicals, just it's just meat that's been raised healthy in a healthy environment that is healthy for you. And I think we say that on our site. I mean, yes, it's beef, but it's healthy beef.
Yeah. Absolutely. And one of the people I interviewed in my book was Nina Teicholz, who wrote a book called The Big Fat Surprise, and how the saturated fat has been demonized over these many years, for the last 30, 40 years. She systematically picks apart every argument and shows all the evidence to the contrary. So if you can get the real, natural, clean stuff, it's a superfood. I say, steak is my favorite superfood.
Yeah. We had burgers last night, Dave.
Oh, delicious. I'll do, so one more question. Madeline Kramer Katz asks, what are the biggest benefits or reasons for Angus versus other breeds of cows? I've always been kind of curious about that myself.
Yeah. So, they're different cows that kind of do different things better. So an Angus cow has become very popular for the taste, the lack of waste for the process. You would never really want to raise an Angus cow to be a milk producer for you. I mean, they can, but that's not what they're efficient at doing. So they tend to have the most taste. They are more tender, and you get more quantity from the animal, if that makes.
Yeah. So there's an efficiency there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
I mean, there went a time that people are like, maybe Hereford, which is another great meat animal. I don't really know why the market turned away from it, but my in-laws were an Angus farm. We're an Angus farm, so
hey, keep doing it if it's working for you, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I can attest to that. It's a delicious meat, and really makes me happy to eat it and to support what all you guys have going on over there.
Well, thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
Yes. Well, thank you, Libby, for making the time. If you'll hang on, I'll say goodbye to you off the air. But folks, do check out lewiscattleva.com. Excellent stuff going on over there. And if you and you are on Instagram, right? Instagram, Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So if people want to follow you and keep an eye on you and keep tabs on what you're doing.
Yeah, we're working on some exciting stuff. I mean, we're working on some exciting things. So stay tuned.
Oh, good. Yes. All right. Looking forward to it. Excellent. Well, folks, thank you all for tuning in for another week of Big Dave's Healthy Happy Hour. Come back next week. Next Thursday night, we will be talking with Dr. Stephen Schrantz. We have a doctor this week. He is an immunologist at the University of Chicago. He's going to talk about staying healthy through quarantine. Maybe we'll get some hot COVID talk going on. Who knows? So do tune in 7:00 next week right here on my YouTube and Facebook channels. All right. Thank you, everybody. Great seeing you, and have a wonderful night.